Hi, folks. This is Mark by Mark A. Foster, Ph.D. for the Maoist-Third Worldist Collective. I was just watching a video by Kulinski. He is a progressive who runs the Secular Talk channel on YouTube. I try to keep abreast of some other tendencies online, including progressivism. I am not a progressive. I never have been a progressive. I don't like progressivism. I have nothing against individuals who happen to be progressives like Kyle Kulinski, but I don't share their general worldview. The video that Kyle was making used the term in reference to Senator Bernie Sanders of Vermont, that he is swinging and missing. What Kyle is talking about is Bernie Sanders' position on the war of Israel against Palestine. The argument, I suppose, that Kyle is making is that Bernie somehow is not really a Zionist, but he's simply not communicating that properly. So he is trying to get across an anti-Zionist perspective, but he's not doing it in an adequate way. And so he's giving the impression that he is, in fact, a Zionist. No, no, that is simply not true. That is the problem, in my view, with progressivism and why progressivism is such a flawed philosophy. Because you have a lot of people who call themselves progressives. Why? Well, because they're not revolutionaries. They want to put band-aids on capitalism. Well, what do they expect? If all you want to do is to put a band-aid on capitalism, then by definition, you are not going to get anybody elected who was going to challenge the system of nation states run by capitalism, by empire. The empire will continue to rule, led by the United States, supported by Israel, which is simply an extension of the empire, with the US sending these bunker-busting bombs to Israel at the same time as Biden says that he is reprimanding Israel and is saying, no, no, Israel, no, Bibi Netanyahu, stop this constant barrage of weapons on Palestine, on Gaza, and begin talking peace. Well, Bibi Netanyahu has no interest in talking peace. And I can't believe that Biden doesn't realize that. I suspect he does, but that's not what he wants. Meaning, as a neoconservative, Bernie Sanders' objectives, Biden's objectives, and Bibi Netanyahu's objectives are all the same because they all share the same neoconservative philosophy. So I don't know what Kyle expects. Does he expect a leopard to change its spots? It's not going to happen. Leopards don't change their spots. They're born with the spots they have, and they die with the spots they have. So expecting some miraculous transformation from Bernie Sanders, who, to my knowledge, has always been a Zionist, has always been a Jewish Zionist. I am also from a Jewish background, and for as long as I can remember, I have been an anti-Zionist. I'm not going to change. I'm not going to suddenly wake up tomorrow with a change of heart and become a Zionist. It's not going to happen. In the same way, I doubt, although I suppose it's possible, that Bernie Sanders will wake up tomorrow and be an anti-Zionist. So Kyle is an extraordinarily smart man. I have watched him mature on his podcasts, beginning when he was, I think, in his early 20s. At that time, he was focused primarily on the philosophy of the new atheism, which is a very problematic philosophy for reasons that are kind of irrelevant to this particular podcast. Then he progressed. I think after he realized he was not getting as many viewers as he could have, he stopped talking about that. Now, whether he is still a new atheist, I would assume so. He never said he had abandoned that position, but he also doesn't talk about that anymore. He talks about more serious political things. And yet, by the same token, Kyle seems to be deluded, honestly, into believing that Bernie Sanders is anything else except what he is, which is a Zionist. I don't understand that. It makes no sense to me. If you support Bernie Sanders, you need to take the whole package. You can't just say, well, I support Bernie Sanders on this and I don't support him on that. Well, you can have your own views, which may include some of Bernie Sanders' views, some of your own views, some of somebody else's views, etc., etc. But if you are putting your stock in the perspectives of one individual, which many people did, Bernie Sanders, then you have to recognize that when you accept Bernie Sanders, you are accepting everything Bernie Sanders says. Because if Bernie Sanders had gotten the Democratic nomination, which was certainly possible, both times he ran, especially maybe the first time, less likely the second time, the same situation that exists now with the US supporting Bibi Netanyahu would likely exist with the US supporting Bibi Netanyahu under Bernie Sanders. So I guess that's my confusion. Do people not realize who Bernie Sanders is? Have people been so deluded into thinking that because they like Bernie Sanders' views on some things like the so-called Fight for 15, which is a meaningless slogan, any family making $15 an hour, even when Bernie Sanders first started saying that when he was running against Hillary Clinton, would be in poverty. $15 an hour is not a living wage. There's no such thing as a living wage of $15 an hour in the United States. You could say that's a minimum wage, okay. A living wage would need to be adjusted based upon the area of the United States in which one lives. So, New York City has a much higher cost of living than where I am in the Rio Grande Valley of Texas. Consequently, one would expect that people would make more money in New York City than they would here in the Rio Grande Valley. That would be a living wage. If you simply say everyone in the United States makes $15 an hour, well, you're simply setting a minimum wage, as I said. So Bernie Sanders, from the very beginning, his views really did not make sense. Bernie Sanders is not a socialist. He called himself a democratic socialist. And if you go back 30 years, as I have, and read some of the statements that Bernie Sanders made 30 years ago, he was at that time a democratic socialist. He supported establishing socialism through democratic elections, meaning eliminating capitalism through democratic elections. Bernie Sanders no longer believes that. He's no longer a democratic socialist. He is a social democrat, like Edward Bernstein, the founder of evolutionary socialism. He believes not in establishing socialism, but in making capitalism, I suppose, more humanitarian. And I have no idea what that would mean. So I felt obliged to make this, in a sense, as a response to what Kyle said. I doubt Kyle will ever see this. I will try to post the link in Kyle's comments section. Whether he sees it or not, I have no idea. And I'll see what happens. But to have these kinds of erroneous expectations about Bernie Sanders being an anti-Zionist is foolish. Why? Because he is a Zionist. He's always been a Zionist. And he's not going to change, or if he is, he hasn't given any indication that he is about to do so anytime soon. This has been Mark by Mark A. Foster, Ph.D. Have a pleasant day and an even better day tomorrow.